Okay, so parent says that they want to do the donation in this way, donate to poor people. But as a child, I want to donate, I will do the donation. Okay. Okay, so I will do the donation, but I will do the donation to poor people as well as NGOs. Okay, so this is your way of child's way of doing the donation. So here I will be overriding the behavior of parent. So this is the place where this is called overriding, when you are trying to change the behavior of your parent. So the method name will be same, logic you can have your own in the different way. Okay, now let's try to call, let's remove these two methods because let's only understand the concept of overriding. Okay, so when I say b dot do donation, when I say b dot do donation and run this, okay, so donate the poor people as well as NGO. Okay, so this is the difference you have seen, like because B is standing A, but it is calling the do donation method of its own, it is not calling the donation method of its parent. Even it can do that, but because it is overriding, it will call its own. So if you call new A, that's the object of A, to donation, this will call the donation of its parent, because we are creating the object of the parents. Okay, so this is the way you can do the overriding. So whenever you do the overriding, then use this annotation, that is override annotation. It means that this method is getting overridden. If you don't use it, it doesn't matter, but as a better programming convention, if you mark as a override, that it means that you are overriding this do donation. Okay, let's see some more complexity about overriding. So first one is, when I say you will have the same method over here as from the parent, it means that if you want to change the visibility, say from public, if you want to reduce it, you cannot do. So you cannot reduce the visibility of any method when you are trying to override from parent to child. So if I write it, visibility of method from parent can't be reduced in child class while overriding. Okay, so you cannot reduce the visibility. Suppose you are doing here public, and try to override this one, you cannot make private, or even you cannot make protected. Okay, but what if you have private here and you do trying to increase the visibility? Here you cannot do the override. What it says that the method do donation of type B must override or implement a super type method. Okay, so if it is private, you cannot do the override. You cannot increase the visibility if it is private in the parent class. So bottom line, you can say that if the method is private, you cannot override. Okay, so what if you write this one as private? So here it means that these are the two different methods. If you call, this is not case of overriding. If you have the same private inside your parent class and inside your child class, it means that those are not the case of overriding. It is like parent has its method and I have my method. Both methods are completely in the scope of their own class. So it is completely a private donation. So if I say, so if I call here, I cannot call because both are private methods, right? So in case of, if I make protected this one, I can increase the visibility, but I cannot reduce the visibility. So three things to understand here about visibility when you are trying to override. One, if the parent class method is private, then you cannot do the override. Okay, you cannot do the override. If you are doing the override, it doesn't allow. If you don't do override, it is a individual class method which cannot, because it is private, it cannot be accessed outside. Okay, now if you make private and this one protected, so as long as it is a individual method, you can do anything, but whenever you are trying to override, it will not allow. So private method cannot, you cannot change you cannot increase the visibility of your private method because it is already a private. If you have protected here, then you can do, if you have protected, then you can do protected, or you can increase to public also. Okay, but if this is public, then this one cannot be reduced. So you cannot reduce, that's for sure. When you are trying to increase the visibility, you can do once the accessibility of the parent method is either protected, right, or public. So in the case of public, so there is no point of increasing the visibility because that is the highest visibility, that is public. Once the accessibility of, once the access of private parent method is protected, then you can increase the accessibility in the child class. So that's how you need to understand about accessibility in the method overriding. This is very important points which are very much commonly asked in interviews. Okay, so let's move ahead and try to understand something more. Let's try to understand about return type also. So when you change the return type, you cannot do the override. Okay, if you do like if you remove the override, annotation means it will try to understand that you are trying to do the overriding, and thus the reason it will not allow. So method return type should be same as in parent class. Let's understand one more concept about throwing the exception in while doing the method overriding. I will tell you in detail how to throw the exception. For time being, just try to understand a basic concept related to a method overriding. So in the exception we have, as we know that every class is extending from object class. Object class is superclass for any class. So like that exception, also we have exception class which has some child classes. Okay, so exception is kind of superclass. So if parent class throws exception, then child class should throw either same exception or its child exception. It can throw child exception or same exception. So same exception means exception here. So child exception, I take example of say IO exception. IO exception is the child exception of exception class. So you can throw the child class exception or the same exception, but you cannot throw the super exception. Suppose parent class is throwing IO exception, then child class cannot throw the super class exception. So that's relationship you need to understand. In case of accessibility, you cannot reduce the accessibility. In case you can increase the accessibility if the access of parent class method is protected. You can make it to public in child, that's why you can increase the accessibility, or you can have the same accessibility, that's not a problem. But in case of when you are looking for throwing the exception, parent class exception, the method which is in parent class, whatever exception it throws, child class can throw either same exception or its child or its subclass. It cannot throw its parent class. So that's how we have seen how it behaves in terms of accessibility or in terms of exception. So these are the pretty much concept that been asked in interview question related to when to do the method overriding. Okay, what is method overriding? What will happen if you're trying to play with accessibility, and what will happen if you try to play with exception that any method throws. Okay, so let's remove okay, let's have same exception. Let's try to understand something more about method overriding. So as I told you in last few videos, there is a concept in Java called final. So I have explained about final variables or final object. There is something called final about methods also. When you create a method as a final, that method cannot be overridden. You cannot override any method which is marked as final in your parent class. So if I in my parent class, if I mark this method as a final, it cannot be overridden. So it says that cannot override the final method from parent class, that is A. The solution is just to remove the final from the parent class. So we need to understand, a lot of time it has been asked, can you override the final methods? No, you cannot override final methods. Okay, so let's see what we have covered in inheritance. So we have covered basics, relationship, superclass, child class, accessibility of protected, constructor chaining, private constructor, we understood super, method overriding, we understood final method. Okay, and let's talk about final class, then we will come to creating parent reference from child object. So final class is the class which cannot be extended. Okay, so if I say how to avoid a class to be extended, there are two ways. One is, as I already explained, you create a default constructor, okay, that is private. So if you have a private default constructor, it cannot be extended. Why? Because when child object try to create the object of parent, the constructor is not accessible because it is private. That's the reason you cannot create the object. If you not create the object of your parent, then you cannot extend it. Other way of avoiding the extending the parent class is to make the parent class as a final. So final classes cannot be extended. In Java you have a lot of classes which are final, okay, especially all the wrapper classes, those are final classes. So let's see, if you see the example of a string here, if I go to JDK documentation of a string, it is final. Okay, a lot of methods, if you say number method is abstract, this is different thing. Math method is final. So you will see a lot of classes which are provided by Java, those are final. The purpose of making final is very simple. If you make any class as a final, it means that no other class can extend the final class. Okay, if you see here, let's remove final from the method label so that I will be get rid of compilation problem. So if you say class B extends A, let's make this class as a final class. It means that you cannot extend class A. So it says that type B cannot subclass the final class A. So it has to be non-final. So the suggestion came itself, remove final. Okay, let's try to see the last concept, which is about what happened, why it is still giving compilation problem. Are we not able to call b dot donation? Oh, it throws the exception. Okay, let's remove the exception. We will understand exception later, how it works. Okay, now this program is free from compilation, I can easily run. So let's try to understand the concept of creation of objects in inheritance. So inheritance, you are trying to giving a relationship between two classes. So in this example I say that I have class A and class that is extended by class B. To understand this concept of creation of objects, let's go back to our earlier method, that is test inheritance. Okay, let's do a fresh test, something like this. If I say cat is equal to new cat, okay, then I say animal is equal to new cat. So here if you see that I have created the object of cat and passing that reference to its parent. These things are very much common. You can, let's remove this for now so that I can run the program properly. So if you run this program, it calls, when you say new cat, it calls animal constructor, pet constructor, and its own constructor inside default constructor. So it calls all the constructors, animal, pet animal, and cat, because cat is standing pet animal is standing animal. If you say new cat again here and passing that reference to animal, you will see that same constructor being called, set of constructors being called. Now the point here, what I want to make it here, when you create the object of your child class, you can pass that reference, you can assign that reference to its parent class. So if I say animal 2 is equal to new lion, okay, what is the problem? Because I don't have lion default constructor, so let's create one default constructor for lion. Okay, now if you run this one, you will be calling that inside animal constructor, inside line constructor. Line is extending the wild animal, so since that there is no constructor for wild animal, right? So let's create one. It is already there, so let's uncomment it. Okay, now if you run this, you will see all the 3 constructor for when you are creating the object for lion. Now here if you see, I have again created the object of lion and passed the reference to its parent class. So parent class can be assigned from a object of its child class, but reverse is not true. So you cannot do something like cat 2 is equal to new pet animal, or you cannot do something like this, say cat 3 is equal to new animal. Okay, this one you cannot do. What it says, the message I want to read it here: pet animal cannot be resolved. Okay, it's now, so it says that cannot convert from pet animal to cat. How to convert this one? It gives a suggestion to cast it. Casting, I will tell you later what is casting. Casting is basically when you are trying to map one object to another one, when you are trying to map pet animal to cat, that is the place where you are trying to do the casting. So casting will, here in this case, casting will solve your compilation problem, but Casting exception is two type of exception. When you say, let's remove this one, and see here it says that cannot convert from animal to cat. This is the casting exception. So it helps you, it will say that try to fix the compilation problem by adding the cast. Okay, so you will do the casting is nothing but you have this object, you want to convert to object to cat, you just cast to cat. So this will solve the compilation problem, but let's see, will it solve the runtime problem? So it says that, let's reduce the number of statements so that we can understand it better. Let's put only one as of now. So if once you create this one, it created the animal constructor. Okay, it created the pet animal constructor because you are trying to create the instantiate the object of pet animal. So it will say it will create the animal first and it will create the default constructor for pet animal. Then while doing the casting to cat, it will say that it is class cast exception. So class cast exception is a runtime exception, which is I will tell you in detail about exception. Just for now you can understand that you cannot do the casting when you are trying to convert the parent object to child object. Okay, so similarly here also, once you run this one, you will see that the constructor of animal been called, but it cannot cast back to the cat. So it has been this kind of questions been asked a lot of times, like playing with assigning the reference to its parent and child and vice versa. Then no need to be confused, just a very simple concept. Child reference can be passed to parent, but parent reference can't be passed to child or children, whatever. So you can remove casting error, you can remove what you can remove, you can remove compilation problem by doing manual casting to child class, but it will throw class cast exception at runtime. So compile time and run time, there are two things. When you write the code and when you compile the code using Java C or in Eclipse, while writing itself, it will tell you the compilation problem. If something is wrong, that is compile time problem. And once you execute the program, whatever exception you will whatever problem you will get, that is called runtime problem. Okay, so here we understood we cannot pass the reference from parent class to child class. Other way it is very much feasible. You can easily pass the reference from child class to parent class. So going forward, whenever I may be creating the object, I may be creating the object of child class, but using the using the variable type of parent class. So something like this I may be using many times. So for example, here I would say that animal is equal to new cat or lion or whatever pet animal or wild animal. So I will create the object of child and pass it to the parent class. Okay, so this is all about inheritance. So we have covered all the concepts of inheritance, whatever is required as a basic programmer. Okay. We will see the other things in the next videos.